Hi, Emilio.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for Emilio for joining me. I'm really delighted to have you here for a conversation. And yeah, it's always a delight to speak with you, whether it's at the net, and I always enjoy your conversation so much with Daniel as well. So yeah, it's great to just, get a chance to have a real time talk with you, Emilio.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Always when you pop up at the net, it's always like a pleasures. And yeah, our talks are really interesting. And yeah, it's really nice to be here.
Oh, thank you, Emilio. Yeah. I would love to talk with you about it. I'm kind of curious if there's some mind lately that you've been thinking about.
Um, I think an interesting topic and one that has been on my mind recently. It's um it's love, like all things regarding to love, because like I remember asking Daniel to like I like a couple months ago I was feeling like like love situations, and of course like the heart is like field stuff, so and sometimes it's hard to process. I was just like, okay, what are some like philosophical type works that I can refer to that talk about love? And Daniel said like there aren't that many, so we and and I would and I think this I don't know what you think, if you like the topic, but I think that could be like a nice one to explore.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a wonderful topic. And it's such a poignant, such a powerful topic, right? Love and romance and falling in love and all of that, because it's so captivating, right? It is so consuming of one's heart and mind. It's, and it's not just like what we can think about analytically. It's very much all of the feelings and all of the emotions that come with it are so profound. And I think that a lot of times, at least I can say a lot of times, people have some of their most formative and transformative experiences through love relationships, love lost, or love, um, you know, challenges with partners or things like that. And heartbreak, honestly, really, just heartbreak is so devastating. And I think it shatters one's whole world, and that's a chance for either kind of continuing in the negativity of it, or in the Hegelian sense, kind of sublating it, right? Like having that be an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to hopefully, just have a better, perhaps a better way to engage with the world and reality. But honestly, it can feel very hard to know how to get there, because, like I said, it's so consuming. But I will say that I think philosophy for me has been helpful regarding, well, lots of things. But I think how I can see it being helpful when it comes to heartbreak uh, is that it can question things, right? Like philosophy is always willing to question things, even our pain, right? Even our certainty. And that's the main thing. A lot of times we can get very stuck in certain feelings because we are very certain about things that actually we actually cannot be certain about, but we decide that we are certain about them because we feel that we are certain about them, And then anyway, I think that certainty is it's very ironic because the certainty is there in a sense to provide security, right? Security and a safety, but it undermines our existential, I don't even know if we can call it this, but it undermines in a strange way our mental stability, because, which seems ironic, right? Shouldn't we only have mental stability with certainty? Well, actually, it seems that we can get very paranoid and fearful, sad, concerned, just obsessed, when we're certain. So it's actually like we need to learn to embrace the uncertainty in order to actually allow ourselves the room to feel what we're feeling, but also to release, or at least like relook at and reanalyze what exactly is going on with our hearts and with our minds and with the actual experience we're in. So anyways, that was a lot, Emilio, so I went on a little tangent, but yeah, I love this topic. And I would love to talk about it more with you now.
Yeah, no, I think those were all wonderful points, and I think you really hit the nail on like, because for example, it's really interesting for me because like one topic that is always something like a commonplace topic that you can almost talk with anyone about is love,
Yeah.
or like or their romantic interests, because like for example, I in like my school, I have like different groups of friends, and on like, and with each of them, like you can like like naturally, like some topics like rise more than others. Like maybe with some friends, I talk more about sports, and others
Right.
more about business, which is the career I'm studying, and etc. But I think it's always really interesting that it it doesn't matter what group I'm speaking with. Like the matter of love always comes up in one way or another, right? Like, who do you like, or what did you think, or about like this person, or oh, I saw you flirting with X guy girl. Like, what's up with that? Like, so it always comes out, right? It's almost and in so many ways, because maybe you haven't seen like an uncle in a really long time, and one of the first things he will ask is like, "Oh, do you have a girlfriend right now?" So it's it's like, I don't know, it's like all present, like in everywhere. It permeates like our talks, our relations with people, like our stories, like most of like one of the oldest stories are like regarding love in some sense, like the like Ulysses or something. Like it always has like a love component to it, like the Odyssey, like everything. And I think that's when you said that, I realized that, and it's fascinating because it's almost um it can be a bridge to talk with people, and it's like an ever present topic that we always seem to crave to want to speak more of, right? It never ends because it always replenishes itself, in the sense that you can always talk about the person you're trying to date right now, right? So it's like an ever like a self renewing type of topic. Um, and as you said, maybe it's one of the ways that, because in maybe a long time ago, we could relate to the world in a more direct capacity. Let's say that way, because we live in a time of a lot of symbolization, for example, a lot of symbol representation. So we don't, so maybe we feel alienated in that sense. And speaking about love, you say it's so like primal, so visceral, that in the moment you are thrust away from the world of symbols, of signs, and you encounter the real, and it's frightening because you don't encounter it that often in like everyday life. In your work, you just go through the motions. So when you go and experience love, it's this thing that you cannot help but talk about, because you don't know how to conceptualize it, to understand it, to feel like. And I think that maybe that's one of the ways that it always, we keep talking about it that way, because it's one of the only ways that we can talk, that we know the other person have experienced that realness like, so yeah, I think that that was interesting.
Yeah, no, that was all really, really good, Emilio. And I like this point. I'm sorry, I was drinking the lemonade, so I'm like, I hope that there wasn't just slurping in the background.
Everything was fine.
But yeah, I love this point about the fact that it's a topic that everyone can relate to. And in it, we could say probably that it's in large part it's really the reason why we're here. You know, any of us are here, right? It's because people loved one another, or at least were attracted to each other. Like at least there was lust there, you know.
Yeah.
There's that there is a distinction there, and that I think is part of what makes the topic interesting too. Is that it shows so many different types of nuances. You know, for example, like a distinction between love and lust, for example, or you know, what exactly does love mean, right? Like, what is love? It's a very big question, but it's also in many ways it feels like it's the ground of our very existence in many ways, because like I said, we're all here for that reason. For more or less, we're here for that reason, and so it's fascinating, and it's in many ways the kind of like, I want to say it's the currency of our existence, in the sense that, I don't mean to make it in like a monetary sense, but there is so much value in love and in being loved and in feeling loved. That's why we talk about it so much too, I think, because we all value that, and I do think that's a great point too. Like that, like I said, that, even amongst your different circles of people, it's something that is so at the core of all of our experiences and thinking, and occupies people's minds so much. And so yeah, it is a great way to be able to relate to one another, is on the very topic of love. And I think too, not simply just because of the dynamics of wanting to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or that, which are very important and very like I said, prevalent in terms of people's thinking, but also because the topic itself of even wanting a partner or a lifelong mate or companion, like a lot of this speaks to like how we see ourselves engaging in the world and to our fullest potential, basically. And also the topic itself reveals how we view ourselves, basically. Like a lot of times, to think about why we want love also will speak to how we already feel loved, right? Even if we're not in a relationship or something like that. Like, how do we value ourselves as a human being, as an individual? And how do we kind of understand love in terms of it being more like, it's kind of like the love of life that then informs our love lives, and I think sometimes we disconnect these things. And that's where I think a lot of the hardship can come up. I mean, there's no way to avoid hardship in life. It's going to be there, and it's going to definitely be there in love. It's probably the main area of like the most seemingly unlimited emotional pain that comes with love. But at the same time, I think sometimes there's not enough discussion around the fact that love, like I said, it's also a type of ground of our existence. So really, if we can learn a little bit more about, or think about how to cultivate the love of life itself, then this can help sometimes, because otherwise one can simply feel a lot of frustration or disappointment or discouragement by being like, oh, I don't, I haven't found love yet, right? And I understand that concept very much, and it's a very much a real thing to actually think about like how to maybe find a partner or to find someone out there, and that does take action, and that's really interesting and kind of fascinating to think about what are the actions of today to find kind of a suitable partner. But yeah, I'll leave that on the side for a second. But the main idea is that there's also a way in which we have to kind of find love in life itself, in understanding a way to love it, even when we are experiencing heartache, or even when we aren't yet with, having the guy or the girl that we want, or whatever. And so, yeah, I think to me, I sometimes I do wish that would be maybe more part of the conversations in the mainstream conversations of romance and things like that, because the way it is now, and you can challenge me on this, just tell me if you think differently, but a lot of times it is really just about the acquisition, right? Like, like you said, the uncle will ask, and it's just small talk, right? People just make conversation. But, do you have a girlfriend, or are you guys going to get married? Or, these questions of like, oh, are you still single? And it's like these things, nobody means like making conversation, but also it puts the emphasis almost like on acquisition as the end all and be all, versus like the cultivating of a love life, hyphen like love, hyphen life, where it's loving life itself. That in that way, yes, I think that actually will bring genuine connections of both friendship and romance that are very incredibly wonderful and needed, and fulfilling and rewarding. But there's also the reality of singleness, and I think the conversation can sometimes be so reductionistic to almost maybe it's an implication, right? It's not said directly, but indirectly, it's kind of making people feel like, well, I should have a girlfriend, right? Or I should have a boyfriend, or whatever. It's just like, well, I think, yeah, I mean, if that's something that one wants, then that's wonderful. And like I said, there's real actions to think about actually doing to put yourself in the place where you can meet somebody or whatever. But it's also there's also the sense of like, honestly, the only thing in my mind that I think that is not the only thing. Let me say this: what really sustains a relationship romantically to me is actually a love of life, right? Because yes, you love that other person and you care for that other person, but ultimately, like, you have to have something to sustain that, right? And a lot of times when it's so when it's so insular, right, this back and forth between the two people, then what is exactly sustaining that, really? Like, it's I don't know, maybe it's just surely like, well, I just, I love them, so that will always be enough. Well, the thing is that then we have to get into the question, like, is love a feeling? Is love a commitment? What is love? Because obviously nobody loves somebody and is with them thinking that they're going to end it, right? Or wanting it to end. They want it to go on forever. So then why do things end? Well, we have to kind of really get into some other questions about, like, what is love? And also, I think, when there's something of a kind of and when I say I love, love life with a dash, the love dash of life, I'm really talking about kind of intrinsic motivation of really being kind of curious, or having your own your passions, or your things that you're doing that kind of like that are actually about love itself, which then kind of sustain the two people forward together, instead of it becoming kind of an insular, obsessional type of almost like consuming thing that then ends up destroying both people. And that is actually something that can sometimes happen too in relationships. And I'm not saying like I know the answers to this. It's very complicated stuff, but I do think there's kind of a third thing, that's kind of needed between two people that can actually kind of both give them directionality and sort of sustain that relationship. And a lot of that to me is about values and like intrinsic motivation, the drive to continue forward, and to be able to encourage each other in the things that, again, encourage that love of life itself, and that love of life itself then actually feeds back. It's like a feedback loop. It feeds into the love for each other, and then back to the love for life, and back to the love for each other. So anyways, that was a lot again, but yeah, some ideas that came to mind for sure. What do you think, Emilio?
Yeah, no, they're wonderful points. I wrote like as you were speaking, I was writing down like my ideas, so I wouldn't
Oh,
forget
good.
them.
Good.
Um, and and I think you're very right because as we previously said, like love is one of the topics that we we constantly come back to with everyone, be
Right.
it in like small talk or like in the deepest moments talking with a friend. However, like we talk about it a lot, but we don't reflect on it a lot, right? Because
Yeah.
we say like, oh, I like this one, how can I get him, get her, right? Like, but we don't really reflect on why, how, etc. And I think
Yeah.
that's really crucial because like I think in Spanish it's easier to see the semantic difference because the words are different in the sense of because in English is falling in love and loving someone, right? So, but
Yes.
love is like the same word in Spanish is falling in love means enamorarse, and like love is or loving someone is amar a alguien. So like you see like amar is like its own word, and enamorarse is like it's like there are two different words, right? So
Yes.
so
Yeah.
so you and I think that that is like a really interesting point to have because like falling in love with someone and loving someone I think are completely different things because
Yeah.
falling in love um it's such a rush, right? Because everything like the world is beautiful, you have meeting, you wake every morning excited to go to
Uh-huh.
school because you might see this person, right? And you have butterflies in your stomach, and they look at you a little bit and you smile all day, and it's just like a wonderful thing, like falling in love with someone, right? But that eventually it ends because like the other person like didn't feel the same way, or because you got to know the person and now you're in a different stage, right? That it could be like equally beautiful but like in a different way, right? You
Yes.
don't it's a different sensation. And I think this also relates with what you said, because of the chase. When you chase someone, you almost chase the idea of the person, right? Because you have not interacted with the person enough to actually know the person, and see what's like. You think, oh, this person is like so beautiful and so organized, and maybe you discovered that maybe just in work related stuff, maybe like their room is like all messy and stuff, right? So you encounter more things about the person the more you know them. And it's weird because people are not maybe ready for that, and also are not looking for that, because the I think one of the most important things we have, like as a species as a whole, are the stories we tell ourselves. And if you see all the movies, all the all the sitcoms, all the series, everything, it's always about the chase, right? It's always the before they get together, how the guy conquered the girl, even though like all these obstacles occurred, or like how the girl like made these like bad guy fall in love with her, like whatever, right? So, but it's always like the chase, like, and the because and I get why, because it's like maybe the most it's the easiest part of the relationship to make a story about, because the emotions are through the roof, everything's really exciting, really tense, so you can make like really gripping stories from that like part of the relationship. But I always find it really weird, because you watch like like a romance film, right? And the whole movie it's about like the chase, and the movie ends when the chase ends, right? They're together, and you're like, okay, but like, do they fight every morning? Because because I don't know, the guy has like bad breath or something, like you don't have those examples, right? You only ever see the chase. So when you approach your own love life, what are you going to do? Chase. And then you're going to get the person, and you're not going to have any idea what to do, what to think, what to feel, right? So I think we need more stories that actually show us what happens when like people get together, like how do they feel, how do they act, like. And I
Yeah.
think that would be really really meaningful, because if we have an example to fall back on, then we can say like, okay, like this is like a healthy relationship, this is like a toxic relationship, these like are things that I would like to emulate, or think these things are I would like to avoid. And I think that and just that by making that distinction between like falling in love and loving someone, if like people suddenly like have those two distinct concepts on their mind, like they can differentiate, right? I'm falling in love with you, but I don't know if I love you. For me to say that I love you, I have to get to know you more. I have to replace my idea of you with the actual you, right? And see if those align in such a way that it allows me to love you, right? Because maybe I think it like the I don't know, the guy girl is a great person, and suddenly I think that they are like mean to waitresses, right? And then they're like, okay, maybe I'm not, maybe I cannot love this person, or maybe someone can. But I think that just like making these distinctions between like I like someone, falling in love, and loving someone, I think those are like in itself like valuable enough to have that around. And yeah, the chase, and let's see the term. And I think and yeah, I think I have other thoughts, but I think I will leave it at this for the moment. But yeah, I think those are some things that I completely agree that we separating gives us like a fuller perspective of love.
Yeah. No, that was really good, Emilio. Thank you so much. I love that point on, enamorarse versus amar. There's two separate words in Spanish. And that's very important and helpful, because then it's like, oh, right, okay, these things are different, right? And the phenomenological experience of falling in love is so, like you said, is so different from the actual day in and day out of loving somebody, right? It's it's almost like it's on drugs or something. Like it's everything's
Yeah.
there's so high, but there's also the very lows of it where you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, they didn't get back to me, maybe they hate me, oh my, all those types of feelings, where you're just like, there's always that's part of the chase, right? There's like the risk and the you're like it comes with like all of those really highs and really lows, that I think, but ultimately though, the falling in love, like as long as you can still have a chance to see them, and that there's the hope, right, that they might feel the same way, then there's just that complete like cloud nine, sort of like your everything is sort of seen with like rose colored glasses, um and yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful and really important idea to actually have your experience of the person, and what we can say maybe the negativities. This doesn't mean it's necessarily negative. It's just the fact that we're humans, not perfect, right? And sometimes these imperfections are often completely there's just not even really given a place in a lot of the movie scripts in terms of love, right? Like the chase is always so idyllic, and it's always just, again, it's romanticized, quite literally, right? Like literally and metaphorically, because it's always about just like it is about the highlights. It's always about kind of the good things, the nice things, the wonderful things. And it's strange how subversive that can be on our thinking, right? Even if we know, like, oh, we know that's a chick flick, or we know that's a romance movie, we know that, but yet somehow it does actually impact our it's almost like this feedback loop with like, we consciously take it in and it goes into our unconscious, and then it goes back to our conscious. And so it's like this sort of strange loop happening there too, that then, even though we don't mean to and we know it's a movie, we still somehow expect to have that same experience in reality, right?
Yeah.
Or we know how to do the chase really, really well, but we don't know what happens after the
Yeah.
chase, like you said. And that's when it kind of like rubber hits the road, right? It's that's when like reality hits, right? And it's wow, it's a whole different world. It's an entirely different world, and what's really crazy is that actually there's something of a quiet, well, yeah, it's almost like, it's not as well. I actually have bring up this analogy before. I had a really great talk with Javier Rivera and Sanduni Muriense about the topic of dating, and I have this analogy between a roller coaster and climbing a mountain, and really, like, a lot of times the falling in love, all of the emotional highs and everything, this is like a roller coaster, like, and it's a thrill, it's great. Right, but then it ends,
Yeah.
and it's always on the same sort of track, and you never know how to get anywhere else beyond it, right? But the mountain climbing is like, you actually have free range and agency, and it's a lot harder, but it's a lot more sublime when you reach the mountaintops, right? When you have those very
Yeah.
beautiful shared moments of climbing the mountain and feeling the good sense of being proud, right, of how far you've been able to get, right, and go, and how far you've been able to get together, if we're talking about this in terms of a relationship. So it's like, it's a difference between the roller coaster highs and lows and the highs and lows of what it means to be mountain climbing, really, and so I think to actually love is much more like the challenging things, but also the rewarding things of climbing a mountain, and what's so funny is that it's almost like this is a juxtaposition in English language, right, of the fall versus the climb. We
Yeah.
have like this fall in love, but really maybe we should think of it much more like climbing in love or something like that. It's kind of interesting to think about that. But yeah, it is very interesting. I'm kind of curious, Emilio, like, what are some of the things or some of the problems that you've encountered when it comes to the topic of love, that you have felt like, man, I wish I had some philosophical tool to answer this question or answer that. Yeah, like, I'm curious about that, Emilio. What would you say?
Um, just that, like, some, like, going through emotions, because
Mm.
like, for example, with my I broke up with my ex-girlfriend like about like 7 months ago.
Mhm.
And like, have and it's interesting because, like, as far as when I was in the relationship, I think that like everything was like like going well, like like conceptual regarding of love and stuff, that was like actually like flowing well. But however, when like the breakup happened, like when how and this is where I make the distinction, because I've liked girls before, right? And sometimes they like me back, sometimes they didn't. And for example, when someone that you like rejects you and say like they don't like you back, it hurts, right? Like it hurts obviously. But I always, the only thing I've ever experienced was like a linear recovery, in the sense that I really, really, really like this girl, and I eventually tell her and stuff, or like, or whatever, and then she tells me not, well, indirectly or indirectly, she said she's not interested, and then it really, really hurts the first day, and then the second day it hurts a lot, but a little bit less, and the third a lot, but a little bit less, and like eventually like a month passes, and then I'm fine. I'm back to my the neutral state when it doesn't hurt anymore. And maybe if I really, really like someone, maybe like 3 months, for example, just to give a time difference, right? So
Uh-huh.
the only thing I've ever experienced is like, and I think this is where like I got confused, because if you mix the language, you cannot differentiate between one and the other, because I thought some of them I would say that I like them, but some I would say I've loved them, right? And I think that was not true, because um I didn't ever like had a relationship with them, so I couldn't like truly know them. And for me, you can only love someone when you actually know them, and you could say like philosophically that you can never like truly know someone, or like to the full extent. But like, let's say I know my friend a lot more than I know a stranger, right? And
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
like significant difference there. And for me, and I want, and just before I continue, and I think this this is another problem with movies, is that for in the you see the characters in the chase, and at the end of the chase they say I love you, and for me, I was young, and I was like, let's say like 12 years old, and I saw a movie, and I saw people saying I love you, and I was like, okay, that's what love means, right? You end the chase and you say I love you.
Yeah.
Right now, when I see a movie and I see that after like knowing the person for about 2 weeks they say I love you, I laugh internally, because I think like, you could not possibly love them. You might be really, you might have fallen for them hard, right? You might fallen in love with them like really, really hard, and it's like a wonderful experience, and like kudos, like good for the characters. But you cannot love someone in 2 weeks, like that just doesn't happen, right? And but because you think in terms of love and stuff like that, it gets confusing. So back to the anecdote. So like the only thing I've experienced is that I like someone, and they didn't like me back, and it was a linear process, and eventually the pain like faded, and like it just didn't exist within me anymore. And for me, what was interesting is that when I can say that my ex-girlfriend was the first person I actually loved, and romantically speaking, like it's the only person I've loved like romantically. So the experience was widely different. And I was like, and I told her at the time that with you I actually know what loving someone means, because like
Mhm.
you reflect on the other, like on the other persons that, and I said no, I like them, I wasn't even close to loving them, right?
Mhm.
So then we end the relationship, and I go into the breakup expecting that it's going to be the same way it's been before. It's going to hurt like
Mhm.
a crap ton at first, and then eventually it hurts less. And what was really weird for me, it wasn't a linear process. It was like a spiral roller coaster thing, that like when we just broke up, I was fine. I was like, okay, that was like a beautiful experience. I'm really grateful that she was in my life. And I was kind of like at peace and calm. And then like 3 months in, like I started like missing her and reminiscing. And then like maybe in the fourth month, I was like pretty okay. And then on the fifth month, I was like an emotional like mess, and it was like a wreckage, and it was like, and then like the 6 month came, and I was like fine. So it's just like, it's
Yeah.
not linear at all. It's like
Wow.
sometimes it hurts and sometimes it doesn't. And it's just
Yeah.
been like a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And and there are no references for me to look at, because like because I'm like in my my like in real life to the person, like to my neighbors or my friends and stuff like that. I don't think that has like happened to someone, or could share the experience in a legible way at least. And yeah, so that was one of the main things I was struggling through, because I was like, how can I make sense of this, right? Because like I have no reference point for this. I don't know how to interpret it, the situation. I don't know how to feel about it, to go about it. I was just like a really like confusing time, because you don't know. And I was like, there are these questions I ask myself, like, is the pain like ever going to go away? Like, or is it going to be like less frequent, but is it's still going to be there like forever? And all these like things and questions. And I think this comes back to like what we were talking at the beginning, because I think most people like don't even know it, like don't even try to love the other person. Because I have a classmate that he has like a very specific goal. He's a guy friend, and he wants to have like a family, right? To have a wife and two kids. I think that he wants two daughters and stuff, and he has like this very concrete goal. And that's fine. That's an admirable goal to have. However, I he he goes into dating just wanting a person that shares the same dream, and
Yeah.
just kind of like have the checkbox. Like, he doesn't even really engage like emotionally with the person, like to the amount that you can say like love in that situation could not ever flourish, because the at least one of the participants doesn't even like he even doesn't know it exists, so he wouldn't like go about it. Because I think like loving someone is like falling in love is like almost accidental. You fall in love, it's in the phrase. But like loving someone, I think it's really intentional, because um it's and it's truly beautiful. I don't know how to explain it, but it requires like an amount of vulnerability that most people are not willing to even consider, let alone like go through it or tolerate. Like, they won't even consider being that vulnerable, because you get exposed to the most exquisite type of pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes like a really strong heart to go through that risk. And to truly love someone is to, I think, to make it, to make them part of you like forever, in some way. Like, they become a part of you in like a really real concrete sense. And that's a scary proposition. That's like a really
Mhm.
huge thing for someone to go through, to happen. um and yeah, I think like most people like go into a relationship, and they may like the person, or may not really like it. And just with this thought, I will I will let you speak. But like the word like girlfriend or boyfriend, like for me are like not too vague, but like too big, in the sense that like they encompass too much types of relationship. Because I can have a girlfriend like I don't really like, but I'm with her because like it's maybe I have fun with her, or maybe I really like that person, but I'm not like, but I couldn't and wouldn't love them.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have a girlfriend that I truly and fully love and want to spend the rest of my time with her. So like, and in all these cases we use the same word, like girlfriend, 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 but the type of relationship is widely different. So so I think most people go into having a boyfriend and girlfriends just so they have someone, and when their uncle asks like, do you have a girlfriend, like, yes, I do have a girlfriend, right? Um so I think like most people like it's not even legible for them that loving someone, like fully loving someone, is something that cannot cure. So yeah, I don't know, those are like
Yeah.
the thoughts.
That was really, really incredible. Thank you, Emilio, and thank you so much for being willing to share. From your own experience. And yeah, that takes a vulnerability too. So thank you for being willing to share on that. And yeah, I think this is a really, really, really interesting point you're bringing up about, the idea of well, one, this idea of like realizing, wow, I really thought I loved the person, but I actually didn't even know what love was for me to say that word, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a powerful word. And honestly, like you said, it's such an incredible risk. So it's like, I think and it's hard, right? Because, and especially in the English language, the word love, you can say that you really love this pizza place down the road. So, it's hard
Yeah.
because like the word gets like very, just like you said with the terms girlfriend and boyfriend, it gets extremely broad, and it's very difficult to always be aware of the power and the potency of what it actually means to say that, to really love someone, right? It's, and I can't help but think about like a lot of the things and framework of understanding for love that, you know i I think, you're talking about like role models, and or not role models, but the idea of an example, right? What example do we
Yeah.
have? And this and that, like, to me, I think about love basically costing one's life. I For me, theological understandings of love are very helpful because they are so jarring. They're so kind of scary, and but also so wonderful. And the idea of like love costing your life, to me, is always something that I don't always remember well, because I'm human and I'm not perfect, so I make mistakes. But I also do try to keep that in my mind, like to remember that it will cost you your whole life to love. And so when I think about that, then it's like, oh wow, yes, okay, that's an incredible word. And a lot of times I think the way that we are taught, or I don't want to say groomed, but kind of groomed regarding concepts of love and romance, is like we just don't understand exactly what we even are saying to say I love someone, right? Like it's
Yeah.
it's and also there can be genuine feelings of connection or affection, or care, and
Yeah. Yeah.
also appreciation, that also can be a type of love too, right? And so it's hard because, anyway, it just shows like how problematic sometimes language can be, right? Because also it's a word, but words are, they say, like, there's an English expression that talk is cheap, right? So it doesn't really matter what you say, what are you doing, right? But at the same time, words are very powerful and they make a big difference as well. So it's like, what are we doing and what are we saying? How do those things correlate with each other? But yeah, so I want to say that because I think too, when you have more experiences in your life, then you start to realize what it means to be loved or to love. And how also I think it's important to understand how it requires constant, like, I don't know how to describe it, but well, actually, to the point to the point about it being willing to lose your life, it involves a lot of death, in the sense of like of the ego dying, right? Of the sense of there's a lot of
Yeah.
deaths that have to occur for new life uh, um, to be birthed, and for that love to grow and continue. Like, it's strange, but love will require us to die in some ways, so that we can become alive in a whole new way, on a whole new
Mm.
level, because of love. And I think that's another part that's not very glamorous, right? Because like death is a very serious thing. It's nothing to talk lightly about. And obviously metaphorical death is even far different from actual physical death. But it's important to understand that death is a part of life, in the sense that well, actually, maybe real death is never, physical death is not a part of actual life, but the metaphorical sense of death is a part of life. It's a part. We see it in, one of my favorite things that you have talked about before is like our ecology. Like, when we understand how we're related to, like, say, the trees and all of that, how does
Yeah.
that change our sense of self? Like, because if you see the seasons and you see the death and the rebirth that occurs there, then it's like, oh wow, like, I'm gonna have to have seasons like that too, right? I'm gonna
Mm.
have these things that change and that develop and grow, or that shift, or that have their own seasons, right? This is a part of life. But now thinking about seasons and this idea of like linear versus cyclical grieving and pain and healing, which all of that is what is involved in heartbreak, and kind of being able to recuperate from that, right? I think that's such an interesting point about the linear versus like this, I don't know, spiral, whatever you want to call it, sort of spiral progression of healing, because I wonder if it is more season like, in a sense, right, where you have it's almost like winter, winter, spring, summer, fall, that's going to occur over and over again as you spiral potentially forward in your life, and that also means, though, away from that person, which is a very hard thing to accept and is part of the grief as well, right? But you have to kind of let go. It's almost like losing half of yourself, or maybe your whole self. It almost feels that way, and it's different than just getting over somebody that it still hurts immensely, like you said, but it's so different to let go and move on and heal from liking somebody a lot, or even feeling like you love somebody a lot, but never actualizing that relationship, right? For one reason or another, versus actually having the real relationship, with somebody you've fallen in love with, and you actually commit to, you love them, really love them. And it's to be able to let go of that is like, it does feel like letting go of life itself sometimes. But I think it does, perhaps why it is more cyclical in the sense of it being spiral versus linear. It makes me wonder if it's more related to the nature of love itself, which is more like Kairos time versus chronological time, where there's kind of more of the wholeness of time within love. So it may not necessarily make it any easier in experience, but I wonder if that is why it might be like that, where you're like, oh wait, I thought I was okay, now I'm really not okay. Like, and I was actually better a month ago. Now why am I so much worse off now? Like, I don't understand. This is horrible. And like you said, like, when will this ever get better? And I don't know. I think the question of when will it ever get better, or can it ever get better, is a very difficult question. Those are very difficult questions to live with. But in some sense, I wonder if part of it is just to learn to live with those questions. There are things in life which will never there will always be a part of us. Even it's like the phantom limb or something like that. Like, I always think that's interesting to me, where people who lose a limb, like say a leg or something, then they actually have to look at it and tell themselves, they have to literally tell themselves, like, I do not have a leg, because they still feel pain in that leg. How can they? They don't even have it there. It's wild, Yeah. I remember Javier and I talking about this, and it was so mind-boggling when he was sharing about this, because I was like, wow, that's so fascinating, and there's so many implications for that on kind of a phenomenological, philosophical level, where it's like, we have to actually tell ourselves, when the phantom pain, and I'm not saying phantom pain in the sense that it's not real. It's very real. It feels extremely, very vivid, very visceral. It's very real, right? But we have to almost tell ourselves, like, take our hands and sort of show ourselves, like, it's not there, and the person has to almost psychologically train themselves to understand that they've let that go, and they don't have it. And so they have to tell themselves, I can't be feeling pain, basically just giving themselves a script. And I might not be exactly on this, maybe there's medical literature that would be more technical about it, but really the main idea is that they have to tell themselves, I don't have a leg, and I therefore, like, I should not be feeling pain there anymore because I don't have a leg, right? It's not there. Now, I don't think this necessarily can apply directly to the heart, because the heart's you can never extricate that from yourself. It's always there, and in that sense. But the metaphorical idea of losing a limb, and that's what a lot of people talk about, if they've lost a spouse, or if they've lost someone they've loved and known for many years, it feels like they lost their right arm, and there's almost a way in which, I don't know that we can ever just tell ourselves, well, like, hush now, don't worry, like, you should be feeling pain, it's not there. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And that's, in some ways, that's very negligent language for it. And so I'm not trying to imply that at all. But what I merely mean to say is that there is something about it where we have to kind of give ourselves language for that letting go. We have to sometimes remind ourselves again that, that was something that was a gift to have and to experience. But it is not in our functionality anymore. We cannot, employ that, or that's not there. Not that we shouldn't feel pain, because we will still feel pain, but you can kind of acknowledge the pain is there, and then allow it to it's almost like let it hurt until it hurts so much that then you can let it go. Now, the reality is that it comes back again sometimes. And I don't know, I guess that the idea of, like, living with the question and living with the pain, possible phantom pain, or learning to kind of let go of that pain, is even a type of pain in itself. And here's what I mean by that. Like, even to not feel hurt for not having that person in your life anymore can feel even so painful, because the pain is still connecting you to them. You see what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah,
pain
yeah.
means they're still, you still have that connection with them. Does that, so it's very it's almost like another type of level of pain to let go of feeling pain regarding them. It's a total another, it's yet again like another feeling of loss. And it's hard and it's sad and so it's a strange thing of like actually feeling pain to not feel pain. That's the irony of it, I think. But anyways, these are just some thoughts that are completely all over the map. But really what I want to say is it does make me think of Rilke, one of my favorite poets, who says like that we have to kind of learn to live with the question, you know. I don't know if there's anything. It does make me wonder though, like, is there something that can make it better or make it the pain go away, or, you know, will it go away, or can it go away? I'm not sure. And you know, the best that one can do, I suppose, is just to keep moving forward, and accept that this is the way it is. So I'm going to have to engage with it the best I can, but also perhaps realize that there are some things that may always remain a question, right? They're always going to be that mystery, and to learn to do the best we can to live with that question and with those questions. So yeah, again, that was kind of all over the map, Emilio, but I would be interested to hear what you have to say on that.
Yeah, for me, the way I relate it is that, for example, I think like 5 years ago, my grandma died, and like, for example, like, and I see how like, especially my mom deals with it, and it's and you see that it's been 5 years, right? It's not an insignificant amount of time, and you can see that, like, there are days that she remembers her, and like, and you could see that she gets nostalgic, and maybe sometimes it hurts, and most days maybe not, but you can see that it, like, and we can see, like, of course, like losing a parent, like, it never goes away, right? Like,
Right.
you will, I think, forever miss them as long as you live, right? So
Yeah.
because it's like, with that type of love. And I think, but like, the interesting thing is that you only get one mom, well, at least like biologically, right? But you only, so you don't, like, you miss her, and that's and you get nostalgic and you feel the pain. But like, what's um funny about romantic love is that, like, if you love someone and you have a heartbreak, like, theoretically speaking, like, well, that would be my question, is that if you can love to persons, right? Like, if you, because you love someone, right? You like truly fully love them, you then like them, but you love them, right? In theory, like, maybe in the future you can meet someone else that you might also love. But I that, for me, as you said, like, maybe we have to live with the questions until some, like, we experience that, something that may be a type of answer. Because, like, for me, it's like, I, at least, I hope, right, that you can love the people in your life, right? I hope that's the case. But in, like, well, it's going, not, I don't know what word to use, like, weird, or like, but it's going to be like, um like, it shatters so many of the preconceived notions of love, in the sense that, like, if, let's say that I ever love someone else, like, I cannot say them that I only love them, right? Because, in a sense, at least, I think that's my experience, and my conceptualizations did, of course, might change, but the way I understand it is that, if you love someone, if you, like, because, not that you like them, or what, or were like, if you love them, I think you love them forever, right? Because
Yeah.
they, like, you have no option, they become part of you.
Yeah.
Um so in the future, if I ever love, like, someone, I cannot truthfully say the words, like, I only love you, because,
Yeah.
like, that doesn't mean I'm going to return with my ex-girlfriend, right? Like, that might never be the intention. That's like,
Right.
loving someone and being in a relationship with them are also, like, different things. We
Yes.
and I think we we sometimes, like, think they're the same thing. Look, I love this person or I like this person. That means I should be with them. And I like, no, like you can
Yeah.
fully like someone and maybe it's not, or you can love someone and it can be not be in the best interests of both parties to be
Yeah.
together, right? So like
Absolutely.
loving someone and yeah, and one and having a relationship with them, it's completely different. So um but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because like you love a second person and all these preconceived notions shatter in the sense that like you are not the only one. I love you. You share my heart with someone else, right?
Yeah.
And like my hopefully like hearts are infinite, right? So you don't lose anything by sharing my heart with someone else. But um, mm, but it's but also like for one part like saying that to someone and for them to like like hearing it and receiving it well, I think that in itself it's going to be a challenge that requires like a lot of, I don't know, like maturity and
Maturity. Yeah.
philosophical reflection on the one part, but the other it's weird because like in most stories it's always like y- only one, like you give your heart completely to one person, right? So if you've already done that, like can you do that again with another person and it be equally like truthful and real? And how and yeah, I don't know, that's also like a question that I have. I don't think I've ever seen it asked or in or reflected in the story, because if normally we stop at the chase, we don't ever get to the part that they will break up, and we don't ever get to the part that maybe they get together or love someone else, right? So I think that's
Oh,
also
oh
yeah,
yeah.
that could
That's
also
so
be,
good.
yeah, be a question that how would it work, feel, be when you love someone romantic, you love a second person romantically, right? So I think that's also something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really, really good, Emilio, and that's this is a great point. And I do think that there's kind of this yeah, this complete sort of rainbows and unicorns idea, like somehow the solitary, the singular devotion of heart to the one person, like that, like you're saying, if the person, maybe some girl would be like, what do you mean, like I'm sharing your heart with another girl, like this, like what do you mean by that? Like there could be somebody who takes it that way.
yeah,
But I think, which unfortunately I think a lot of people may take it that way, and honestly that's kind of what can be pushed in the mainstream, and also in, in programming, as in like with movies, shows, etc., like somehow like, oh, you can't have your heart for anyone else, and it's just, and it's just kind of like, to me I think that's completely unrealistic, because we do, like life is a multiplicity of love, of
yeah,
loving. And I think that, to me, there's actually something really beautiful actually about the fact that if you have loved someone with your whole heart, of course they're still going to be in your heart. Of course they're still, as long as they're, as long as you are alive, you'll still love that person, because you care about them as a human being, not just for what you get from them or can
yeah,
get from them, but because they exist in this world. And so I think that's actually very, and I think if somebody can recognize it as such, then, and I do think that would take some maturity. Then the person can understand that it, like, they don't have to feel like, I don't know. To me, sometimes like people have these terms like second fiddle. It's an English expression, like where the person feels like they're not the first, like they're not the only and the first, and blah blah blah. And it's just like that I don't know if that's just, something that unfortunately the ego, it's kind of egoic, where it just is this insistence on being like, again, the person's only devotion. But it's like the person can literally be like, no, like I am actually devoting my life to you, like I'm choosing you. Like the fact that they've loved someone in the past, why does that have any bearing on the fact that now they love this other person, right? This second person or the new person, right? Why, like, that shouldn't, in some ways, maybe if another way to, for the person to perhaps take it, is like, well, actually they've had experience and being able to be willing to take a risk like that. Like that's
yeah,
actually something admirable and good. It's like you said, it's not for the faint of heart. Like it takes a big heart, a strong heart, to be able to do that. So I don't know. I guess I also think about it like a lot of times it's typically, women, but I guess men can also feel the same way. Like they don't want to be, next best thing, right? Or they don't want to feel like the person's quote unquote settling, which I always think like that language is, we can talk about that another time, but it's interesting because I think there's a lot of language that just, it shows, it feels so much more like the person is having to, be sure and know that, like I'm your only love of your entire life. And it's just like, well, that's, to me, that's just not very realistic to what life actually is like. It's so much more complicated. And like situations where people can love one another, but it's not actually in either of the person's best interest to actually have that relationship. And so, it's like, I think to me, the idea of understanding love as a sentiment of just appreciating another human being for who that they are in the world, like that type of a love is something that you probably will still have for someone you've been in a romantic relationship with, especially if it was very serious or you really, actually love the person. And so, yeah, I mean, I do think it kind of, to me, what it seems to show is that people have a very skewed sense of this sort of a singular devotion of heart that somehow it feels so threatened. And maybe it has to do with power, like it's kind of a power battle or power dynamic of like proving your love for me or proving that I'm the only girl or whatever. And the person can literally be like, no, I'm literally like, I love you. Like you're the one I want to be with. I'm giving you my time, my heart, my days. And there's, I will give you my whole self. And the person can still, if they're afraid that like the person, well, maybe the fact that they love someone else, that means they don't have enough love for me. It's such a limited understanding of love, I think, because it's, like you said, there is something that about love itself that actually is, there's something limitless. I mean, there's a lot to get into with that in terms of limits and limits and limitlessness when it comes to love itself. But what I mean to say is that I do think that love, like, and my, Daniel's mom will always say this, like she would always say that love multiplies. And I think that's a better way to understand love is its multiplication instead of just, it's like this scarce object. And maybe we need it to be scarce because then it's valuable or something, right? But but we never think about that with like energy. Like energy is always valuable to us, whether there's actually the more of it, the better, like it's so fascinating to me. And Daniel made that point. So I really need to like mention that he was the one who brought that up on energy, which I thought was such a profound idea. But like, we have such a kind of scarcity mindset, I think, even with love, but really like love, if it is the ground of our existence in many ways, it's like, it's overflowing, like it's actually overflowing. And so if we can tap more into that, I think there's a lot more freedom in that. And there's a lot more room for just actually genuinely being able to experience it and not have so much fear cropped up around it, which then ultimately, like, it kind of, it's, there's a way in which fear and love it's hard for love to be perfected in fear, like in many ways, love is what's going to drive out fear, real love. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting point, Emilio. And I think it does reveal, I think a lot of what we've talked about today reveals how some of the narratives that we get from movies, from shows, from the way people understand romance and love, it really does not set anyone up very well for actually, like engaging with the real, right? Like almost like the Lacan, like his concept of the real when it comes to love itself,
Yeah, it's and I think like most of the movies are like Hollywood movies, are like Western movies, but also like anecdotally, like for example, I think in Japan they are also like um they are like very procedure like that, like for example, like they meet on an app and they schedule a date like a month in advance, and by the third date, like the guy has to tell the girl if she likes her or not, and if they do, like 6 months later they meet the parents, and like 1 year later they get married. Like it's you like my given like some interviews I've watched and stuff, it's almost like they don't they actually like don't really care about the person or don't really love them. It's just like a contractual thing, like we just have to do this, so I'm just finding someone that's willing, and I will tolerate and they will tolerate me. So and I think that's really interesting that it's not only on the West, but also like I've heard um but well, but it also like depends on the culture, right? Because I think like some religions allow like the man to have like multiple wives, and like of course you can have a wife and not love her, but like theoretically speaking, that could like in those type of religions, at least the man, right, um could like love to women at the same time.
Yeah,
and and I don't know, so maybe it's also like as you said, like the movies and the media influences, and it's also cultural, because
yeah,
like there are some other places where they do it different, like
yeah,
kind of like polyamorous style stuff. Like I also think like some in some place in Africa, like there's like the family lives in a house, and like each wife has its own room, and like the guy spends like, I don't know, like Monday is on the first room, and like Wednesday is on the like another room, right? So it's just like, and like for and like I think for most people that type of arrangement would be like, oh, what's like, that's weird or that's wrong, but that's just, it just clashes really really hard with what like mm, religion in the West says, or like what the media says. So I think there, of course, there's like, as we've talked about, there's like a cultural component to it.
yeah.
But yeah, it's the main thing, and I try to, well, I don't know if I try to, but I comment with my friends and stuff, like just trying to make the distinction, right? Because if you like the I think that the very first step would be like to differentiate what love is
Yeah.
versus when you like someone. And it's weird because when you really like someone, you could think that's love, right? But there's
Yes.
like a substantial difference between really liking someone and loving someone. So I think that would be like the first, like like even the first step to actually like go through all the other motions, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a very fundamental first step that and I think on the whole it's largely not done. It's largely not thought about honestly. And I do think it's a very good starting place to think about the differences. And yeah, I will say one more thing really quick. Unfortunately, I probably will have to wrap up the call, Emilio. I know you also have an appointment too. So but I love this so much. I wish I could talk for like hours more because there's so much more to talk about. Like you
Yeah.
said, oh, it's replenishing, right?
Yeah.
But I love this so much. And I think that, it also makes me think too about kind of the idea of maybe the only, I have a little recording on this topic, but basically instead of thinking about it as like finding the one, because this goes back to the singular language that we have in kind of Western culture, at least, of like love being this one person, and you can't have any other person in your heart, even if they're from the past, blah blah blah. But like instead of it being, finding the one, it to me what's singular is the decision ultimately, like the
Yeah.
choice itself. That's what's singular. It's like, yes, there is a one, it's a one choice, it's a one decision to, and I mean I think about it from my position in a marital position, but it's like it's my, that was the one thing, is the one choice to commit my life to my husband Daniel. So it's like that to me was the singular aspect in. And I'm not to say that, like, I think that does bode with the idea of your whole heart then being given to that person. But also I'm a mother. I mean, your heart, and I know this is different types of love now we're getting into, not just speaking about romantic love, but I guess what I mean to say is that love is so there's a multiplicity of love in its nature, different types of love, because then I also have children, we have children, I love them, so it's like, is it okay that I have in my heart, like, even there, the family structure itself reveals a multiplicity in your heart of people you love. And so, but ultimately your commitment of partnership in the adult sense is with that person, right? We like with my spouse. So I guess what I mean to say is, like, I think we just have to kind of I think to understand love in more of its nuance and its complexity and its variations is important, because a lot of times it's a monolith in the mainstream, right? Like it's just a monolith of like love, and it's like everything is grouped under that in not really understood in terms of its distinctions and its difference and its beauty in that difference, right? And so then there's a lot of confusion, and that can, unfortunately, confusion can cause to and even increase the hurt and the and the pain is already going to be pain, like we talked about, but like it's even more hard to even navigate through that, because there was never any of those like identifications of like, oh wow, I actually was feeling this or that, or this was this type of love or whatever. You know, so yeah, I think this is where though philosophy comes in handy, because we can take a look at what like we can ask those questions about it, and therefore we can kind of allow that grip, that grief, and the grief of heartbreak can have on us, to loosen a bit in asking and unraveling things a little bit with our questions, you know. So that can be something really quite helpful about it, you know. But yes, I am going to jump, Emilio, and again, I thank you so much for your time. I hope we can do this again soon, and I really enjoyed talking with you very, very much.
It was such a lovely, lovely talk. Thank you for having me. It was such a wonderful time, and I hope you have a really nice day.
Yes, thank you, Emilio. You too. Que tengas un buen día.
Igualmente, bye.
Chao.